Well, hey, welcome to another episode of Church Leadership Lab. We are glad to have you with us. Our goal here is to help church leaders cultivate healthy churches. And so we love to have conversations and discuss how we can help do that, how that can happen. I have myself, Scott, here. Scott. I don't think it's how you're supposed to introduce yourself, but that's how
I
we
like
did
it.
We have Casey.
Hey.
Yeah, it worked, right? Casey, say hey
Hi.
if you want. Hey. And then we have Matt. Matt Steen. We are excited. So Matt, I'm going to give a quick bio for you. Matt served at the local church for 2 decades almost, right? As youth pastor, church planter, executive pastor. He's the co-founder of Chemistry Staffing and really spends his time helping churches thrive through intentionality, clarity, creating healthy cultures, stuff that we are super passionate about as well. So Matt, welcome to the Church Leadership Lab.
It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we're excited. We're pumped for this conversation. Both Casey and I have spent time on staff in churches, full-time ministry. So I think the idea of having healthy staff culture is something we're both passionate about seeing happen for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So the first thing I would love to ask, so we have your kind of the public bio, right? The little the little paragraph in the back of the book or the conference bio, whatever it is. But I like to ask everyone this, what is something that doesn't necessarily make that public bio, but all your friends and family would readily say about you or know about you?
Oh, yeah. So Teresa and I been married for 14 years. We're dinks, right? Double income, no kids. So of course we've got the dog, right?
Nice.
And so we have a 4-year-old retired greyhound who is sleeping outside my door. So any of those noises, I promise, aren't me. But she is she's a little terror. So yeah,
That's awesome.
What is she retired from? From racing?
Yeah, well, so she grew up on the race or the training farm, and so she never raced. She's a little too distractible, and right around the time she came of age, COVID was shutting down all the tracks. So she came straight from the training farm, but she was getting groomed to run until they ran out of tracks for her to run on. So,
Wow,
That is so cool. So you rescued a non-racing race dog.
pretty much, pretty much, because when they shut the tracks down in Florida, they had nowhere to go for American dogs, and so she's and greyhounds. We didn't sign up to talk about this, but I don't care. Greyhounds are awesome. You know, everybody's like, oh, they're so fast. Well, they're fast, and she'll go. I mean, when she moves, and everybody's like, well, they must be so hyper. It's like, she sleeps 18 hours a day. It's incredible.
So do I. It's great. It's fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
I wish I had her life, so.
Right.
As long as we're on dogs. So I have a Great Dane English Mastiff mix.
Oh wow, that's some beef there.
She's a big dog. She's like, I think 130, 140 pounds.
Wow.
She's actually the runt of the litter. So her brothers and sisters are like 180, 190. But same thing. She's like the sweetest thing, like a true lap dog, which is painful often.
Mm-hmm.
But same thing. She loves to just sleep most of the time. And it's great.
It's a good life. It really is.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, well, Matt, we're excited to jump in and talk about more than just dogs, not less than, but more than, and really talk about what it looks like to have a healthy church staff, because I think it's a really interesting time for that. Obviously, you're on the front lines of that, having conversations left and right with churches. So I'm curious, we've heard a lot in the news. It's been this phrase thrown around, the Great Resignation, and there's a lot of ways to think about that. But what have you seen as the effect that the Great Resignation has had on churches in particular?
Man, I tell you what, it's been real in the church, right? I mean, and for good reason too, because I mean, we all know that 2020 was a dumpster fire. Mm-hmm. But I mean, it was also every decision that a pastor made since 2022 has been the wrong one, regardless of what they decided.
Yeah.
So you go from, do we close down? Do we stay open? Do we wear masks? Do we not wear masks? Do we do vaccines or no? But then you also have racial stuff. Then you also have, contentious election. And then you got, more vaccine conversations and all that kind of stuff. And so, pastors just started walking away, right? And they're tired and beaten up and all that kind of stuff. And so it's been real, long-term effects of this. COVID did a lot to expose a lot of things that were already hurt or broken in the church.
Yeah.
And it's also done a lot to accelerate it. And as far as exposing and accelerating, I mean, what COVID did was just really expose and accelerated our bench depth issues. Right. So for years coming into COVID and coming into the Great Resignation, we had been seeing seminaries struggle to produce people that actually wanted to go into ministry. Okay. We watched a lot of people getting MDivs that wanted to urban development and social work and nonprofits, or just got it for a vanity degree, which I really don't understand that. That's a lot of work for just, just something to hang on the wall.
Yeah, probably easier vanity degrees out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And so, we've watched that. We've watched Bible colleges shutter a lot of their ministry programs just because they're tuition driven and they don't have, enough students that are going through them. And so that was already happening. Residency programs are struggling to find people for that. And then COVID comes, really kind of accelerated an issue that was already there. But put on top of that, March and April of 2021, and we pinpoint that. We watched as worship and youth pastors left. Not left their church, they left ministry. And they did that, a couple reasons. One, I mean, COVID was, again, a dumpster fire. But a lot of times in March of 2020, those are the offices that a senior pastor went into and said, hey, look, innovate us 30 years in 30 days. Get us up online.
Yeah.
We should have had an online campus already, but, now we really need one. And so they became the online campus pastor. And, that became their 50, 60, 70 hours a week, doing all the video editing, doing all this, all the stuff that it took to pull that off became their role. And then we started to go back into person, right? And so if you were in Florida, I mean, you went back in person in April. If you're in California, I think you're still out. But, it depending on when they went back in person, then their job became, be the campus pastor online for 50, 60, 70 hours a week. And, oh, by the way, you're also our youth pastor or our worship pastor.
Right.
And so a lot of them, it's ministry. You're a good soldier. You suck it up and you say, I'll get through Christmas. 2021 is going to be back to normal. And we see how that worked out, right? Yeah. And so March and April of 21, we watched as those guys just left and just said, I haven't seen my family for years, it feels like for years. I haven't, I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm still getting the same pay for, half the work I'm doing now. And just got to the point where they were out. And so we haven't seen them come back yet. And while people will say, hey, youth ministry isn't a stepping stone or anything like that, we also know that our youth pastors, our campus pastors, our executive pastors, our next senior pastors come from those youth pastor, worship pastor ranks.
Yeah. And
we've already been struggling to fill those ranks with the next generation of church leaders. Plus, we have accelerated succession because of COVID.
Sure.
And we've got a generation of senior pastors, lead pastors, solo pastors, whatever you want to call them, that are of a certain age, and are starting to, think about what happens next. And so it's been a bit of a mess. My big prayer right now for the church is on both ends of a pastor's timeline, right? We need to replenish our bench depth. We need to get residencies. We need to figure out how to develop the next generation of pastors. But also we need to figure out how to do succession well. And so,
yeah. Well, one thing you said that was interesting to me, you said, so especially the people who have left, like you haven't seen them come back yet.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in one part, this question might be hard to answer because we have no precedent, right? It's not like, well, last time we made it through a pandemic, like, do you anticipate that? Do you see there sort of being either coming back or sort of a return of sorts, like, or is it sort of, hey, what's done is done and we figure out from here?
I don't know. I hope so, because I think we lost some of our best. Now, don't hear me saying is, all the good ones left and there's no good ones left, right?
No.
I'm not saying that. But what we saw leave were a lot of people with 5 to 10 years of experience, right? And people who really kind of had some good skills. I hope they come back. But I hope they come back after they've done the work to heal. We went through a season where it felt like, for me, we're trying to help churches find pastors, and it felt like for a season we were sending more people to counseling than we were to the churches that we were working with. Just because of how beat up people were. We told a lot of people, hey, maybe ministry is going to be there at some point.
Yeah.
Take some time, heal up your wounds, get to the point where your spouse can actually come to church and not hate everybody's guts.
Yeah.
Get to the point where your kids, are actually okay with being in church, and have healed from the hits that you've taken, and maybe it takes 3 years, maybe it takes 5 years. Who knows? For some people, maybe they don't come back, but I hope the ones that have left are healing. And when they do come back, that they have, they've done the work to kind of restore and bind up wounds and be ready to go fresh, because we need them, and we need them to be healthy.
Yeah.
Matt, I know Scott and you and I haven't had a chance to talk, but I know Scott and I both have been kind of on the other side of that, where I appreciate that you're kind of leaning into a little bit of this stuff that we often don't say. Ministry is hard. It can be lonely. It can be exhausting. It can even be unhealthy. Because I love what you said. We're the good soldiers. We just, hey, this is what God called me to do, and I'm going to do it. And I love the discipline of that and the sacrifice. But I love that you're actually kind of pointing out, hey, there is kind of an unhealthy side of this. So let's do not just the Band-Aid, let's do the healing and make sure that we're providing those resources to come back in a healthy way, so that you're not just going to burn out in another 12 months. So I appreciate that you're mentioning that, and not just like it's rainbows and sunshine and everything's great. Like, not yet. I appreciate the honesty there, because we don't like to shy away from the hard parts. I think that's really cool. One thing that we talk about a lot is a healthy church, and of course, your area of expertise is a healthy church staff. So kind of a 2-part question. We can break this down if you want, but I'm curious if you have seen kind of some common denominators, or maybe not every, but hey, that's a healthy church staff. What are the things that those staffs have in common? And then on the alternate side of that, what is the consistently missing thing that you go, man, that's the thing that would make you healthy, that would make a huge impact on the health of a staff? Yeah,
I think, none of this is life-changing, right? None of this is shocking. But I think it's high trust. It's giving people the benefit of the doubt, and it's being self-aware enough to know when you're, that you may be wrong, And we do that so well in our country right now, don't we?
Yeah, it's kind of a highlight right now.
Yeah, I talk a lot about with my wife. I call it toxic certainty, and the pride and the arrogance that goes with, it's got to be my way or the highway. I mean, that's what our culture is teaching us.
Yeah,
and that can infect our churches, just giving people the benefit of the doubt on our staff teams, and not reading too much into why they're doing what they're doing, or with our elder board, or with our pastor, or whatever. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. I think just prioritizing actual communication and not like email, but actually going in and having a conversation with somebody is huge. And again, nothing stunning, but we've gotten away from doing the hard work of actually going in and sitting down across from somebody and having a conversation, because it's easier to send out an email, right?
Yeah.
So communication, not information.
Communicate. Well, yeah, but no, like face-to-face communication.
Right.
Sure.
You know, breathe in the same air as somebody.
Well,
You know.
yeah, and I kind of wondered too, like following the theme of some of our conversation, like there was, come March 2020, there became all of a sudden, we talk about like the tyranny of the urgent. Well, It was 2 years of the urgent, or, a year and a half or whatever. And so I wonder too, if you follow that timeline, if everyone's kind of walking through something personally, individually, but also ministry looked very different. I mean, there's, and it's everything's so urgent. We have to figure out, I was in ministry at that time, and I had a week to figure out a live stream.
Yeah.
I was at a spot where it wasn't necessarily like, this better blow our minds or else, like it wasn't that.
Yeah.
But I think I had my own sort of like, this needs to be really good, because this is how our people are going to go to church next week, how the church is going to gather. So anyway, I wonder too, if in the midst of that, we lost some of the even capacity to have, that kind of communication relationship. And then all of a sudden you have the habits of, not doing that.
Yeah. So I travel way too much. Okay. and I live in Orlando. So I am guaranteed to be in big crowds of people. It's just the nature of it. We have our Disney, annual pass, and we go, and, I go and I'm in the airport. God save me. A few times a month. Right. And what I've noticed is that we've forgotten those people skills of dealing with people like that we don't know, or interacting with people in a group, and have forgotten some of our common courtesy, those muscles that we had to flex in order to survive through COVID, because it became really easy to be a keyboard warrior, right?
Yeah.
It became really easy to kind of hide behind the screen and not have to talk to somebody. And so we've kind of gotten into those habits, and we let people stir us up, and we it's easy for us to forget, hey, we need to go back and really, get a sense of what it's like to, hug somebody again, get a sense of what it's like to, to stand in line with people, and instead of getting irritated with things, just kind of try to make somebody smile. Right.
Or even default to fear. Like you see people standing close to somebody, and like you see the fear on your face. You're like, it wasn't that long ago that in a line you would strike up a conversation with a stranger, because that's what humans do. We don't do that anymore.
Yeah, we've kind of made each other the enemy in so many ways, right? And we watch that in our political discourse. We watch that in what we see on the cable news networks that seem to be discipling more of our people than we do in church. And so those habits and those patterns, have come into our teams in some way. And if we need to, get to the point where we can just laugh together, one of my favorite things to do. So you do staffing long enough, you end up being asked to be, on part-time staff at a church, and how part-time staff works. Yeah. But, so I'm part of our church staff here in Orlando. And one of three of my favorite things to do is just have Christmas parties for our staff teams. Mm. And so, we had our staff and our elders over, and, it's church staff, there's always something going on. There's always something, some emergency happening, and, that can lead to some challenging conversations with people. But it was one of the first times that this staff team and the elder board had really interacted together. And you watch people laugh together, right? You watch people tell stories and learn background. And if you get to that point, that's how a healthy church staff, that's a healthy culture there. If you can do that. Now, you still got to have accountability conversations, right? You still got to have hard conversations from time to time. But man, if your team's not laughing together, and if you're a senior pastor and your staff hasn't seen the inside of your house, you're missing something really easy to really kind of help bond the team together.
Yeah, that's super helpful, and I think is a helpful reminder too. Sometimes it's not more and more or better and better, and it's just let's understand each other and relate.
Or even a book, right? It's like, the prescription is we've done a really good job of kind of taking. I'm a systems and processes guy, right? I'm an executive pastor, and that was most of what I did. Systems, processes, build it up, make the structures work, all that kind of stuff. And we've done a really good job over the last 20, 30 years of driving home leadership, driving home systems and processes, and all that kind of stuff. And I think we've taken the pendulum too far, to where it's like, let's put if you need pastoral care, here's a form to fill out. Right. It's like, okay, maybe that's nice. But if I'm a pastor and I don't know who needs a pastoral touch, that's telling you something. Right. And so many of our churches, and you guys didn't, I'm starting to preach now. So many of our churches, have struggled post-COVID getting volunteers back. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that we just haven't touched people enough. Haven't sat down and had enough coffee with people. That's how you build healthy teams. It's coffee, it's lunch, it's doing stupid things that, aren't prescribed in a book. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a really valid point, Emily. We talk a lot about using systems and tools to automate and create efficiencies, but you named something that it's not rocket science, it's not brain surgery, but you said the words pastoral care, and in my brain I went, but we removed the pastor and the care, and we just click here, scan this, but I need to talk to a human. I just need someone to see my face and watch me cry for a minute and the ugly cry. Go, I see you, I hear you, and go, that's all I needed.
Yeah. My big hope on the other side of COVID is that we return to some of the block and tackle pastoring basics. We've told churches, you don't need to hire another graphic designer. No. Let a volunteer do that. You don't need to hire, a specialist. Get some generalists that just have some basic pastoral skills.
Yeah.
Somebody that,
Well, especially because too, I think about that, and I spend a lot of my time in worship, creative, all that stuff. But I'm like, honestly, the world does a lot of that way better. And and what we have is belonging that we can offer, and obviously more the power of the gospel. I'm not going into that, but I'm just saying, there's somebody at my church who just recently came to faith, and he, the reason why he stuck around, he was like, I don't have community anywhere. And I haven't been able to find, and so that was the initial thing, and obviously, then God worked from there, but I think that's massive. I think it's huge.
Dude, I was a youth pastor in right outside of New York City, Bergen County, New Jersey. Okay, and I went there from Atlanta, right? Which no culture difference whatsoever.
No,
in Atlanta, we would do an event, and we would get an inflatable and have 400 kids show up. In New York. New York City, we had the best music on the face of the planet, 30 minutes from us.
Yeah.
Had the best food, the best pizza, within a 10-minute drive.
Yeah.
All the arts, all the culture, all the media. All that stuff was done so much better. But the one thing that we had was genuine community where we cared for people and loved each other.
Yeah.
And so I became the worst youth pastor ever. Because it's we didn't do stupid games. We just got together and just loved each other.
Yeah.
And walked through life together. And if we, that's it, man.
Yeah.
The world kills it.
The only thing I would push back on is that you were 10 minutes away from the best pizza, because I'm in Chicago and I would tend to disagree with that statement.
Well,
I feel
I'll pray for your soul.
I think you were about a 12-hour drive away from the best pizza.
I'll pray for your soul.
Hey, appreciate it.
we can be wrong.
Yeah.
We can invite you back to our sister podcast where we just debate about food and regional preference and things like that.
Yeah. But honestly, Casey, what are you going to say? You're in Oklahoma, so.
We have got the best barbecue and ribs, and if you need a good steak, you come to where we actually raise the beef itself. So.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
We'll
You can
allow
have
it.
your pizza.
Okay, deal.
Shout out to all the vegans and plant-based dieters out there. This is not the region for you.
Yeah,
It's
no,
true.
that's California, right?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of funny you said that, Matt. I was traveling last week. I was in Southern California, and I was having lunch, and my Southern companion ordered fried chicken and mashed potatoes in Southern California.
Wow.
And it was legitimately really, as a Southerner, as a true Southerner, it was legit delicious. That menu choice struck up a conversation with the waitress who we were watching her, and we were commenting on the lack of social interaction. And like, we're from the South, we talk to everybody, and everybody is yes sir and yes ma'am, and like, how's your day? And you ask because you genuinely mean it. But we were commenting on how like no one's looking at each other, no one's talking. And we were like, man, this is the best fried chicken. And we are from the land of fried. And the entire countenance of this server changed. She was like, right? I know, it's delicious. We had this like 5-minute conversation with the server because two people who weren't like from there just like struck up conversation because we genuinely were interested in just the countenance of that tiny little social interaction.
Yeah.
Changed the temperature of the room.
Breaks
and it was so
barriers.
pleasant. And like we forgot how to do that. And that is not a dig on certain regions that just culturally don't engage like that. That was not at all about like people. Everyone's nice in the South because we're not. But generally, we've become less social.
Oh, yeah.
And as believers, I feel like we are genuinely called to be kindness to everyone. And even we've kind of stopped being good at that.
Yeah. And that's a shame. And I'm going to have to figure out where you were because I'll be in Southern California next week.
I will send you. Every time I go out of my way to go back, and I'll send it to you. Nice. I'll drop it in the show notes too.
Outstanding.
Matt, one thing I wanted to touch on because I don't necessarily, and you feel free to disagree. I don't necessarily see the people leaving ministry as like over or done. I think that process is still happening. At least people that I'm interacting with. But I know that some might be at a spot where that's not necessarily what they need to do, but maybe it seems like because of everything they see and hear, like, oh, that's what I need to be a part of. So for those who might have a staff and have even that staff member, they can kind of sense like they're sort of on the edge or maybe, struggling or whatever. Like, what are some things that they can do just to be proactive in caring for them and engaging them in that process?
Yeah. So the first thing is probably getting rid of the weirdness around that. Churches are just notoriously bad about giving people a box when they say, hey, I think I might need to wrestle through another position, right? It's just, it's awful. We talk to, I'm going to take the long way to get there, but when we talk to guys that are in transition, when we talk to churches that are, thinking through some of this stuff, I just have to stop and remind them that the church isn't Starbucks, right?
Yeah.
So bear with me. Starbucks, their whole business model, they talk about the third space. You may have heard this. The first space is work life, second space is home life, or it's probably first space is home and then work. But then third space is your community, right? Where you go and you sit down and drink $17 cups of mediocre coffee together and hang out. And so, and Starbucks is just monetizing that.
Yeah.
Well, the truth is, ministry types don't have three spaces. We don't get that luxury. Because of the nature of our job, it's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. It's just kind of is what it is. Because of the nature of our job, our community, our work, and our family, everything is intermingled in that, right?
It's so true.
And we forget that. And so, a plumber is starting to think about, going and finding a new job. And he goes and he tells his community group.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, pray for me because, my work is just in rough shape and I think I need to leave. And, and everybody prays for him and says, yeah, we're with you. Pastor does that, and it's like, oh, you're abandoning us. How dare you? Here's a box, get out of the parsonage next week.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that if somebody is starting to think that way, let's normalize that conversation. Mm-hmm. Let's celebrate, what has happened and just say, hey, we want to encourage you through this. Now, we need to put guardrails in place, and it can't be one of those deals where like every 3 weeks it's pray for me, I think I'm leaving again. Because we just can't take people through that yo-yo or that roller coaster. But, if we can normalize the conversation to the point where within our team, somebody comes to us and says, I had a church approach me about this. Can we pray about it together? And what do you honestly think? If we can do that, that's awesome. If we can get to that point, that would be great. Now it takes a lot of restraint and it takes emotional maturity on our part to not feel like we're being, somebody's, getting us in the back or betraying us. But if we can get to that point and kind of hold our teams loosely, that would be awesome. Unfortunately, we're not quite there yet.
Yeah.
Matt, you guys have a ton of great resources, and I don't mean to turn this into like a commercial for your company, but you guys do. Like, looking at your website, I was so impressed with some of the resources you have on there. You had one that I read every single word because I just thought it was really interesting about what churches who focus on team development, like what are they doing? Mm-hmm. And I think what you just kind of talked about is a huge part of that is if I have the mindset, Scott comes to me in confidence, he's like, I am burning out. I feel like it's time for me to go. It's going to be as a boss, as a manager, I'm not Scott's boss, but like as if I'm in a pastoral position, like you said, to hold tightly and go, oh my goodness, please don't quit. Yeah. And in my mind, I go instantly self-preservation, a little bit, what am I going to do without you? There's too much work. I can't lose you. Kind of leaning into those resources you guys have. If I go into every day with the mindset of I am developing leaders, if I've done my job, you will not be here forever. But kind of to your earlier point, there's a succession plan and there is a transition strategy way before you even started, let alone for when the day comes that you trust me of saying, I think my season has expired. I go, man, I am so proud of you. How can I help you move forward? Yeah. I think that's just such a different mindset, but that's not an accident. That's super proactive.
That's if we can get to that point, that'd be awesome. One of the things that people ask me a lot is, well, how do we keep our team from leaving in the first place? And,
you don't.
You don't, but there's some things you can do to keep them around longer, especially in the church. Right. We don't talk about career paths in the church.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah.
So I'm weird. Right. And that's no shocker, but I went to business school, but I also went to seminary. Right. And so, when I was getting my MBA, everything was career path and you need to plot out where you're going to go and how you're going to do this and where do you want to be in 20 years and all that. In the church space, we don't talk about that.
Yeah.
And there's some good pieces to that. I mean, it's like, it's not a career, it's a calling. Yes. And we need to approach it differently than just kind of checking a box and jumping and stuff. But we also have to realize that skinny jeans only last for so long, right?
And we all outgrow them.
we all outgrow them. And when we can't wear them anymore, we can't be a worship guy, so
that threshold, if anyone's wondering.
That's why you're doing podcasts. I mean, it's just like, and so at some point, we need to sit down with our youth pastor or our worship pastor and just say, hey, look, what do you think God, and we need to do this. We can't sit back and wait for them to do it, and come and approach us. Yeah. We need to be proactive and say, hey, as you look at how God has wired you, what do you see yourself doing, 20 years from now? Mm-hmm. And listen, and maybe they says, hey, I feel like, maybe down the road, God wants me to be a senior pastor or an executive pastor or a campus pastor. And kind of setting aside some time as part of their, like the old Google 20% time, of setting aside time and, even their yearly goals of developing the skill set that they're going to need to get there. Yeah. Right. And if you start doing that, I mean, people will stick around longer, but the way that we do it in a lot of our churches now is we never talk about it. Mm-hmm. And so it's like they look around and they say, oh, I'm going to be a youth pastor for the rest of my life here. I guess I got to go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you have that conversation, and all of a sudden you need a discipleship person.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hey, if we can do that earlier, we keep our team around, and we send out people when it's time for them to go, and we don't have a slot for them.
Yeah.
We bless the next church.
I'm kicking myself because I know I saw it just this morning. Somebody saw it too, and they know exactly who it was. But somebody that I followed this morning posted something about, I love exit interviews, but that information, it's too little too late.
Oh, yeah.
Take those exact same questions, but it's hey, what do you want to learn? Welcome interview. And then, like you said, those annuals, not just let's check off your goals, but where are you going? What are your passions? And how can we be building that into your development?
Yeah.
I like the way you said that in ministry, it's not necessarily a career path, but it is a development path.
Absolutely.
So yeah. I like the connection there.
Well, one thing too, though, so everything we just said, yes, I wholeheartedly agree. I also know there's some people who, and I'll speak from the worship pastor perspective, who love that. Like, that's what they love. That's what they're passionate. That's what they're really gifted at. That's what they want to do. But sometimes there's this expectation, both that and youth, depending on the context, all of that like, you'll do that. And then when you want to be a real pastor, like you'll step into, X amount of role. And I think you see that you see that in the marketplace as well, to where it's sort of like, what do you do with the individual contributor who just loves, like they're fueled up by doing the work? What does a career path look like for them? Because I think to think about it both ways, and for some people it'll be like, yeah, I could see that. I want to explore that, all that. And others I think are like, yeah, I love what I'm doing. And so how can you still invest with them? Because typically career paths mean more money, more, responsibility, more all of that. So what could it look like for them to stay in that role primarily while experiencing, some of that as well?
Yeah, I think, and you're right, it needs to be okay for that to be the answer, right? It genuinely needs to be okay for a youth guy to say, I'm a youth lifer. Yeah. Right. I'm a worship lifer. I want to do children's ministry for as long as I live. And that's a valid answer. But again, you can help people develop their skill set there. Yeah. So, what does it look like for you to develop yourself as a worshiper? What does it look like to develop yourself as a leader of teams or a designer of services? Yep. The other piece of this, and that you kind of touched but didn't, there's a piece of this where you're right. Corporate, there's a lot of up and out, up or out type of a mindset. The beauty of the calling piece is we don't have to do that. Right. I think one of the things that would serve us all well in ministry is to have a healthy understanding of what we're wired to do and where we're wired to lead. Right. I think we all have kind of a range, where, past this point, we're out of our depth. Yeah. And we best serve the kingdom by going back to where we best fit. Right. And so for me, you don't want me working in a mega church. It requires a level of specialization that I'm just going to get bored and toxic, right? I do better in churches that need a generalist. Okay. Somebody that can do a lot of different things and just partly the chaos that is required to keep me stimulated. I need that. Yeah. But, and I think one of the things that we've done in the American church that may, it's helped us, but it's also hurt us in some ways, is we have so glamorized the big church and the grow and the go fast and all that kind of stuff that we have inadvertently, thrown shade on the small church guy. Yeah. Right. I think there's a lot of people out there that are incredibly gifted to lead a church of 200 or a church of 500 or, a church of 1,000, that they've read all the books, they've gone to all the conferences, and everybody that they see, are the guy that's leading the church of, 10,000 that grows, by, 2,000 every year, and all that kind of stuff. And that gets celebrated. And all of a sudden it's like, well, dang, if I'm going to be all that I'm supposed to be, I need to be that guy. Well, maybe that's not who God designed you to be.
Yeah,
and
that's really good. That's
100%.
really good.
So I love guys. I think the only guy out there right now that's really celebrating the small church guy in the way that we need to is Carl Vaders. If you haven't read his stuff, or if you haven't had him on the podcast yet, I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah,
you're welcome.
Yeah,
his voice is one that we need, because he's a guy that will go and celebrate the small church guys that are doing the hard work day in and day out, caring for people, watching generations grow, and marrying kids that they baptize and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
And that's incredible work. And he'll celebrate them, and he doesn't throw stones at the big church, because he's like, we need them too.
Totally.
So yeah. That was my commercial for Carl.
Well, I could go on that, but we'll save that for part 2, maybe.
Matt, you might have just kind of answered the next question, but there's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of really obvious chaos and struggle, and we're not yet done with the resignation and this pandemic and all the effects of that. So there's a lot of junk, but there's a lot of hope out there too. So from your seat, and there's not a one size fits all, but if you kind of had to pick one thing that is a word of encouragement, Scott says it best. I really like it. The wind in the sails. If there's one thing that you can say that would actually encourage 95% of the pastors out there, regardless of the size of their congregation or their specific type of leadership, what would be your one word of encouragement?
Oh my, just one?
No pressure.
One word.
Hope. How about that? So here's the deal. God is not surprised by the situation that you are in. And God is working in ways that you have no idea, that he's doing. I don't know. Have you guys ever seen Mr. Holland's Opus?
Yeah.
I read the book a while ago, actually.
There's a book?
I think so.
Okay. Now I know what I'm doing next week. So the movie is this band teacher who thought he was going to go be a rock star or something like that, and ended up, in order to pay the bills, is teaching high school band and a driver's ed teacher. And at the very end of the movie, and I get choked up every time I watch this. Okay. It's ugly cry. At the very end of the movie, he's retiring and, all this stuff. And they're talking about how, Mr. Holland has had such a incredible impact on our lives. And we're afraid that he doesn't realize just how much of an impact he had. Right. Mm-hmm. And so somebody found a copy of this symphony that he wrote. And he's like, got all this alumni from his band growing through the 20 years or however many years that he was there that have come back to play this inaugural thing. And it's like, I choke up and I cry ugly on that, because it's like, that's what heaven's going to be like. I'm convinced of it. Okay. Mm-hmm. It's going to be us walking into a room and saying, whoa, that guy's here. And they look at it and say, your ministry to me is part of why I'm here.
Wow.
And it's like, we don't know the impact that we're having. It is easy for us in the midst of board meetings going sour, and people saying stupid things that they don't mean, in an email that cut deep, and the pain's real.
Yeah.
The cut hurts.
Yeah.
But we don't know the impact that we're having on the people that we may not have heard from. Right. We don't know the impact that we're having, and we are. Yeah. We are making a difference to the church in this country, and God is powering that. So, that's what gets me through. So just go watch Mr. Holland's Opus.
That's the takeaway. Go watch Mr. Holland's Opus. That encouragement is awesome. I don't think it's a book.
Okay.
I was thinking of Mr. Popper's Penguins. That's a different. That is a book that I read. It had the Mr. and that's what I thought.
That's an okay movie too.
So yeah, that one's fine. I would encourage Mr. Holland's Opus over that. So
Richard Dreyfuss is the man.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
he's so good.
That's awesome.
Yeah, but he didn't have penguins.
Yeah,
no. Next time.
Yeah. Well, Holland Part 2.
Let's do this. I know we've been chatting for a while. I appreciate your time. It's been a really, this conversation I think has blessed me in a number of ways. that you don't even know about, actually. Speaking of the thing you just said. So, but what I want to respect your time. We do our final little spot on the show. We do our final 5. So we just run through 5 questions super quick. So we're going to throw them at you. Would love to hear what you have to say. Again, this is a lot of pressure on this one, but one book you'd recommend to church leaders.
I think it's The Pastor by Eugene Peterson.
I have that on order, actually.
Do you?
Yeah.
It's phenomenal. I try to read it every year or two because it reminds me, you know what? I'm not a corporate CEO.
Yeah.
I'm a pastor. And this is what that means. It's awesome. And it's Eugene Peterson. I mean, the dude wrote the message.
It's awesome.
What can you say?
Yeah.
But are there penguins?
No. I think there's no.
Okay.
Nice.
Way to ruin it for me.
Yeah. Sorry. It's in, again, part 2. So.
Yeah. Part 2.
All right, Matt, what is the last thing that you listened to on Spotify, Apple, or your streaming channel of choice?
I'm a podcast person. So I don't know if you guys have seen The Bulletin.
Yeah.
From Christianity Today, Mike Cosper's second act.
Yep.
Earlier today, I was listening to his interview with Bono, which was awesome.
Oh, I bet that's good.
I heard about that.
Awesome.
My brother-in-law is a massive U2 fan, and so we always talk about he's usually aware of any new sort of media piece.
Anything.
YouTube. Yeah. We were talking about that, actually. I got to listen to that.
Yeah.
All right. What's your favorite piece of technology that you own?
I don't know. I think I want to be Amish in my, in the future.
So a hammer.
Yeah. I think I asked my wife what my favorite piece of technology was, and she said it might be your Kindle, and that's actually a pretty good because I just have the Kindle Paperwhite.
Yeah.
I can read on it and do nothing else.
Yeah.
No emails, no, nothing.
It's awesome.
Just read.
Nice. I respect that.
Yeah.
I don't understand it, but I respect it. All right, Matt, what is a quote or a piece of advice that has really stuck with you over the years?
Okay, quote. Over my desk, it says it's from Zinzendorf. It's preach the gospel, die, be forgotten.
Ooh, that's it.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's ironic that I know his name, but that's beside the point.
I feel like
I like it.
I feel like this might also be the answer to the next one. But one thing you'd like to communicate just to our audience of church leaders here as we wrap up.
Yeah, don't forsake your soul. Don't forsake your soul. I love pastors. I love church leaders. The hardest thing about this last couple of years for me is hearing the stories and the heartbreak and some of the spiritual hurt that's going on in our pastors' families. And it's because we are so passionate about caring for our congregation, so passionate about caring for people that we neglect the work of caring for our own souls. And so, there's some great organizations out there that, Standing Stone Ministries does great work with pastors, coaching them, caring for them, pastoring pastors for free. Find somebody and do the work of your own soul. So
that's awesome.
That's so good.
Super good. And I think a great note to end on. Matt, thanks so much for coming on. If you could just give everyone a quick little where they can find out more about you, about chemistry staffing and everything you guys are doing.
Chemistrystaffing.com. That's the best place to go, and you can learn more about me, but also find out how we serve churches. Awesome.
Well, we appreciate it. And thank you to those of you listening, watching, joining us. Feel free to like, subscribe, leave a review. We hope that this blessed you. We hope that it helps church leaders cultivate healthy churches. And we will see you next time.